All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Pathfinder, Trekking to College. We are here for day 7 of the conference. I'm Jasmine, your host for this session. Thank you for tuning in to this transfer session brought to you by LIMS Review Center, the Princeton Review Philippines, AUG Philippines, and AECC Philippines. For this session, we'll be having another talk about transfers by Gia Gawson. So the speaker will focus on her transfer student journey and the process she went through in order to be able to transfer. She'll share with us why she decided to transfer and what factors led her to choose the school that she did. So let's lay down the house rules before we start. Please don't spam the Q&A box or send any inappropriate messages. Please be respectful at all times, and all questions must be sent to the Q&A box. Though if you'd like to send us any reactions, you may do so using the chat box. So now that we're all familiar with the house rules, please allow me to introduce our speaker for this session, who we're really excited to have talk to you more about transferring. So Gia Gawson is a graduate of Immaculate Conception Academy San Juan's first IB cohort. After her IB days, she attended Ateneo de Manila University studying a BS Psychology. While in Ateneo, she also joined CODE, Consultants for Organizational Development and Empowerment, which aims to empower the youth organizations by equipping them with organizational development strategies. Through CODE, Gia realized her passion for consulting, which inspired her to transfer to Singapore Management University. Currently, she's studying a double degree in Information Systems and Business with the goal of pursuing a career in digital transformation consulting. So, really excited to hear from you, Gia. Please take it away.
Hi everyone. So just give me like 1 minute. I'll be sharing my slides soon. Okay. Hi everyone. So today I'll be sharing my transfer story. And just again, like a quick introduction of who I am. So as stated a while ago, I did graduate from Immaculate Conception, and then I went to Ateneo for 1 year. I took BS Psychology. And then from there, I also shifted into BS Management Honors. And from 2022 onwards, I've been at Singapore Management University doing my double degree program in Information Systems and Business. So a few fun facts about me to just help you get to know me as a person is I'm a dog lover. So I have a 2-year-old toy poodle. Her name's Davy. And she's named after the main character of the show Never Have I Ever, if any of you are familiar with that. So I also love lifting weights and I try to stay as active as possible. So usually I go to the gym 4 to 5 times a week and sometimes 6 to help me de-stress. And yeah, like currently I'm training to run a 5 kilometer marathon. And I can't live without music. So I don't know if any of you here are Swifties, but yeah, like Taylor Swift has been my number one since I was 5. But I also listen to like a lot of different genres like rock, alternative, indie, R&B, or R&B and EDM. So yeah, I listen to pretty much everything. So with that, like moving into like my reasons for transferring. So first is I wanted to change my career path. So I always thought that, you know, I always thought that I would yeah. Yeah, I have a question. Are my slides moving? Cannot even like see the slide right now. Okay, title slide. Hold on, so sorry. Let me fix that. Okay, wait. Um, okay, it's moving. All right, great. So let me just go back to the slide. Okay, can you guys give me a thumbs up if you can see the slide? Okay, yeah, great. Okay, I'll just continue. All right, thanks for letting me know. Anyways, yeah, so the first one was because I wanted to change my career path. So like I mentioned, like I wanted to be like a pre-med. So that's why I was in BS psychology. Like I did plan on going to medical school, even if like I took IB and stuff. But then, like, while I was in Ateneo, I joined Code, which is a consulting organization for a bunch of youth nonprofits. And from that, that's when I realized that, I do enjoy business and it's something that I see myself pursuing. And also, like, even while I was planning to go into medical school, I had some doubts within myself if I'll be able to, like, carry it out since it takes like 8 years, right, to become a doctor. So, yeah, like, I knew that it really wasn't for me. And that's when I decided to move into more of like the business or like technology space. And that's why I thought of going to Singapore in the first place, because it is the tech hub of Asia right now. And yeah, there are a lot more like internships and opportunities to learn from professionals there and also like to work with very specialized professors. So that's one reason why I decided to transfer. Another reason is I wanted to challenge myself. And yeah, like when you study abroad, it really is a challenge because you're independent. At least for me, it was the first time in my life where I didn't have like relatives around, where I had to be on my own. And I had to like challenge myself to kind of like do things on my own, which is really the first time for me to like um be like in this type of situation. So actually it was like my first time taking a plane on my own, having to like fend for myself at like an airport and like do my own chores as well as like, be responsible for myself, which is something that like I didn't even think about before I went abroad. I always thought that I would just have to manage my studies and then that would be it. But yeah, like there's a lot more to life when like I transferred abroad. So that's something that like I wanted to be able to have. At the same time, like I think it's important to really remember this quote that, with all of this like independence, that it does have a lot of responsibility to it. So you have to make sure you care for yourself. At the same time, you also have to focus on your studies. So having to balance that has really been like one of the main challenges that I faced when I transferred. So next, I also am a very adventurous person. So I knew that by transferring abroad, I would have the opportunity to venture more outside of my comfort zone. And yeah, like when you explore the world and when you like to travel and even like live abroad in this case, you will experience culture shock and you will have to adapt. And that's another challenge that you will face. And at the end of the day, I think it's also like a good opportunity to be able to network with a diverse group of students because you'll be meeting people from all over the globe and you'll learn about their culture and what it's like to live in different places. And throughout all of this, you can develop more of like a broad perspective. So that's really the three main reasons why I decided to transfer. Okay, can everyone see the next slide? Yeah, okay, great, just checking. All right, so going back to the slide on choosing my university. So I currently I am at SMU, like what I mentioned earlier, and to choose my university, I considered the same factors that you would consider if you were just applying to universities even as a first year. So the first was I considered location. So the main um, consideration I had was the country I was going to. So in the past, when I applied to go abroad as a first year, I applied to the UK and Australia. But this time I wanted to like stay within Asia because I felt like that was more of like my comfort zone. So with that, I decided to apply to Singapore, which is yeah, like in Southeast Asia, so relatively like close to home. And I also considered like the weather since it would be like a tropical country. I wouldn't really have to like buy new clothes that are specific for cold weather simply because like Singapore is like really hot. So yeah, it would kind of like be the same as like the Philippines. I wouldn't really have like to worry about that. Whereas if you went to somewhere with like four seasons, you would have to consider how that would factor into like the clothes you would bring and as well as like the experience as a whole. So next, I also thought about like city campus versus a closed campus. And actually, didn't pay too much attention to this because I knew that I wanted to go to a city anyways. Because yeah, like you grow up in a city, naturally you want to gravitate towards that. But at the same time, the advantage of going to like a closed campus is that um, you'll experience more of a campus culture simply because people will mainly concentrate themselves within the school district. Whereas if you went to a city campus, people would want to like explore and are more likely to venture outside of the campus. So it really depends on like the preference that you have. So next is like the class size and the style. So going to SMU, we have different styled classes from other Singapore universities. So what we have is more of a seminar style where it's like discussion based, whereas other universities such as NUS or like NTU would have lecture classes where it's like a big lecture hall with like 300 or 200 students and they kind of just like gather there. And then next would be like campus life. So you would like to like see if the school that you're attending has a bunch of different events and extracurricular activities. So yeah, like if you have an extracurricular activity that you want to join in that specific school, that might be like a really good fit for you. So next, you also have like the cost or like the tuition fees. So that's also important to consider, like whether you apply for scholarships or grants and if that's available to a transfer student. So at least within Singapore, they have the tuition grant scheme. So you can apply for like subsidized tuition provided you'll work within Singapore for 3 years. So that was another factor. And then next is like international students. So if you're transferring like abroad, it's a lot easier to meet international students when there are a lot of them. Um, they yeah, so it's important to consider also like if there would be like international students and whether they have like welcoming activities. Most universities will have it, but you'll want to see if they have a strong presence because sometimes it's easier to like find that community when it's like already available and already established. So last would be like accommodation. So you'll have to consider if there are dorms available and if you'll be able to like get a slot for like 4 years or if you'll have to like find a private housing or co-living type of situation. So next we have like the difference between my experiences at SMU versus Ateneo. And I will say that for my 1 year at Ateneo, it was mostly online. So I didn't really get to experience the campus culture itself. Whereas when I went to SMU, it was my first time like having face-to-face college classes. So I would say that was like the main difference between my experience, the fact that one was online and one was face-to-face. So from there, like I couldn't really experience like making face like having social interactions in Ateneo that weren't online. So I would only meet people online, which wouldn't it wasn't really like the best opportunity to like make new friends, but at the same time it was also available provided that the initiative to reach out. So I would say like the main difference in terms of academics is that SMU has a lot less classes compared to Ateneo. So in SMU, the average workload is 4 to 5 classes, where you have like a 3 hour lecture every week. So you'll only have you only have that one specific class once a week. But there are also modules where you can get an hour and a half per session, but you'll meet 2 times a week. Whereas in Ateneo, from what I remember, it's 3 times a week. And the classes are about 1 hour to 1.5, depending on like your professor and their type of teaching style. So with that, in SMU, you have less contact hours, I'd say, compared to Ateneo, because you'll only see your professor once a week. And that was something that I had to really adjust to because I'm so used to like even in high school, like when you see your teachers every day, it's easier to like approach them and ask them questions. But in SMU, I felt like I had to be like more accountable in terms of reaching out to my professors simply because I'd see them a lot less. And then I would say the main difference also like with interacting with your peers is at least within Singapore universities, there are not that many international students. So I would say there are about 9% of the whole student population consists of internationals, whereas in Ateneo, it's like, people, like everyone's primarily like Filipino. So it's a lot easier to like interact with them and like you have more in common. But yeah, wherein in SMU, I really had to like make an effort in order to like learn the culture for me to be able to like make friends and get to know other people. So that was like one thing, like you really have to like adapt culturally, which was actually really shocking to me because I didn't think that going to Singapore would have much of an impact simply because like I was thinking like it's a Southeast Asian country, like it wouldn't be a drastic change. But yeah, like surprisingly it was. So I think either way, like wherever you go, you have to expect that you are going to have to adapt in order to like make new friends and to, be able to socialize with other people. So yeah, like I would say overall, in terms of differences, I would say that those are the main two differences that I had to face when I transferred. So next, like moving on to like the transfer process. So I did a bunch of research on this since I also looked at schools in the US and how they work, since I know some of you might be interested in that. And for Singapore specifically, the transfer applications are just like freshman or year one applications. There's pretty much no difference other than the fact that you would have to indicate that you came from a previous university, and you could also submit your first semester grades from the university that you previously attended. So you're likely to start as a freshman, even if you transferred coming from second year. But you can receive transfer credit for the classes you've taken in university. So this kind of just works as an exemption. And you could get like either an elective or even like a major class or a core class exempted if you applied for the transfer credit. So these are just some of the basic requirements for transferring. So you're still going to have to submit your high school transcript along with your university transcript. So this is typically just for the first semester. So I would highly suggest that you would request for these documents ahead of time from your school because it can take like months for them to process due to just having like a lot of requests. So next would be recommendation letters. So this usually comes from your high school teachers, but it can also come from like your university professors if you had any that you were able to like build a close bond with. So next, you would also have to submit different types of personal statements. So for Singapore, these are usually like shorter in length. So I remember I just wrote a 200-word essay, which is like really short when you compare it to the UK application or the US application, where I know it's like 600 words, and they also ask for a lot of like supplementals depending on the university. So within SMU, there's also such thing as like quick takes, which are just like 50 words. So it's literally just like one sentence or like two sentences to answer this type of essay. Then you have your short essays, which I already mentioned. And last, you'll have like optional scholarship essays, which are like 300 words. So basically for Singapore, I would say the applications are really short and can be done like really quickly. Whereas if you apply to like the US, I think it would take more time simply because like it would be a longer essay. So next, like tips for starting your application. I think you should just start as early as possible. So you'd want to be able to take your time on perfecting your application and to make sure that it really reflects who you are. So I would suggest to start like thinking about applying and starting this whole process 3 months before the deadline, or if you can start even earlier, that's a lot better. And I only advise this 3 months if you don't have to take any standardized tests like SAT, IELTS, or TOEFL, which you would actually have to prepare for, so it would take longer. So yeah, it would also depend on the number of schools you plan to apply to. So if you apply to a lot more, then I think you should start way earlier than this. So next, I think you should also start with researching and shortlisting universities. So in general, people tend to apply to a fewer number of universities when they transfer compared to a first year application, because when you have to balance like university versus like, and as well as like applying, it's a lot more stressful compared to like high school, simply because like you have more workloads. So I would suggest to just apply to like 1 to 4 universities because that's more manageable than if you were to apply to like 10, right? So yeah, so next you have to make a document or a sheet that's like a master file. So this can include like the list of schools and the corresponding dates for the applications, the required documents and essays, and you can kind of like check all of them once you're done. This just makes it so that your process is really organized and you can see all the deadlines laid out in front of you, which makes it a lot easier to schedule. So I would prioritize the applications according to the soonest deadline. So if you have an application that's due on March 15, like do it before one that's due on like April, because it's just a lot more systematic that way. So another tip I have is to just sort by the common requirements and complete those tasks first, because that would allow you to apply to a lot more schools. So basically, if you're applying to, let's say, for example, 4 schools, and they're all requiring the SAT and a common app essay, and they all have their own supplementals as well, I would say get the SAT and the common app essay done first, and then proceed to like do the requirements in accordance with the soonest deadline, because that way you could get more, like you have more covered than if you were, for example, to focus on one university first, if that makes any sense. Yeah. So next, like just to give you like an idea of the types of essays within the Singapore universities, if anyone here is interested in applying to Singapore, for NUS, they typically just ask for a personal statement about your extracurriculars and achievements, and then you'd have a transfer essay as to why you would want to go to NUS. And then for NTU, you'd have a scholarship essay. This was like optional, so if you're not applying for a scholarship, you don't have to do it at all. And then you also have short essays for like 100 words just to describe your extracurricular activities. For SMU, they required the most number of essays. So you had your 2 quick takes, your short essay about your extracurriculars and activities. So this is similar to the one at NTU. And the personal statement about like extracurriculars and achievements, which is the same as the one in NUS. And the scholarship essay, which was pretty similar to the one in NTU. And then next, you have SUTD, so this is Singapore University of Technology and Design, and they required short answer questions, which were, I think, around 150 words, and you could choose from different prompts. And then they also had an interview with admissions, and I believe they also have a scholarship essay. So I think to clearly illustrate the example that I mentioned earlier, you get to see how like within Singapore applications, there's a lot of overlap. So the personal statement for the extracurriculars and achievement, it's a very general prompt. It just asks you to describe like what are the notable things you've done in the past and any like notable achievements, things like that. So essentially you could use the same essay for NUS, SMU, NTU, and SUTD, if essentially. So that means that it would be best to focus on perfecting that one essay first before you delve into more specific essays like the quick takes or the short answer questions, which are specific to SMU and SUTD respectively. As well as the scholarship essay, they all kind of have the same prompt. So it would be best to like focus on completing the essays which are like common to all of the applications first. Okay, so for the transfer essay tips, I think within Singapore, only NUS specifically requires a transfer essay, whereas the other universities don't consider it much. So disclaimer, for the transfer essays for each university may be different. So make sure you refer to the prompt, the guide, the website, or reach out to the admissions office of the university if you have any questions. So it really depends on what the university would be looking for in a transfer essay, but usually the prompt is simply why you want to transfer to this university and what can this university offer you. It's usually around that style of prompt. So the first step is to do a lot of research on the university and your selected program. So for example, if you want to apply to, let's say, UPenn, you want to do research on UPenn, and let's say you're interested in like the psychology program. So why UPenn and why their psychology program? Why not the psychology program of like USC? So research on like why the specific points of, as to what characterizes the psychology program at Penn. And you can kind of like do research on other universities as well to see if this is a unique selling point at your desired university. Yeah, so that's something that's really important that a lot of people kind of overlook, that you have to research on other universities as well to see if one, the program is even a right fit for you, and two, if the unique selling point is something that resonates with you. So you can also note down your likes and why it's a good fit for you, and try to find connections between the university program and your values and your personal goals and interests. Because that way, when you write your essay, it shows that how it can show how much of a fit you are in that university. So next is to compare and contrast. So you have to compare your current program with the one you're aiming to transfer into. So with this, I don't mean like a straightforward direct comparison where you would say that, oh, I want to transfer into UPenn because my current university, I don't like this, I don't like that. Like when you phrase it that way, it's not going to come across as very professional to the universities. So what you want to do instead is to just highlight why what your desired program can offer you, which may not be available at your current university. So for example, let's say again, like going back to the UPenn example, let's say you wanted to transfer to UPenn and they have certain professor you want to take a class under. You can say that, oh, look, the reason why I want to transfer to Penn is because my current university does not have this professor who teaches X class, which is something I'm interested in learning. Or maybe they have like a specific um, type of research program that you want to work in. So you could say that, oh, my current university does not have this research program. I want to transfer and I want to work with that professor and do some research on this, that, and something like that. So you don't have to like phrase it super directly, rather than kind of just, again, selling why you want to go there to them. So convincing them that this school is a good fit for you. So it's really similar to like the year one application. So lastly is informed interest. So basically when you apply to transfer, you're coming from the perspective of a student who's already been in university for 1 year. So you have to like highlight again, like about that specific universe, like the one you want to transfer to, like you have to highlight the specific details even more, because the admissions office kind of has that expectation that you already know what you want from a college experience. And that's why you're transferring. So yeah, again, like I mentioned, you can cite specific professors and classes you want to take, clubs you want to join, and other professional development opportunities. So yeah, again, one good way to put it is my current university wasn't able to like offer me this, but I want to do this. So something like that. So you kind of show the gap between the university you're currently in and the university that you want to attend. So something like that, but you have to be able to sell it in a very subtle way that it doesn't show that you're putting down the university in any way. Rather, you kind of are a person who you just want to explore, something like that. So next, it's also advisable that you consider your strengths, values, and goals. So I think this is already a tip given to a lot of year one applicants, but you have to emphasize what makes you a strong candidate and showcase strong core values and that you know how to apply them to your life. So for example, let's say you're a person who values being hardworking, for example. Like that's a very general value. But you can't just say like, oh, I'm a hardworking person. You have to show it rather than state it clearly. So like you have to say like, oh, through like, let's say you started your own business. You started a business in high school and you continued working for that business and growing it all the way until university. So that kind of shows the type of person you are. You're very passionate, you're dedicated, you're hardworking. So that's an example of how you're showing what makes you a strong candidate, but it's a very concrete way rather than by just stating the value itself. At the same time, you want to explain your career and life goals and how attending this university will help you achieve that goal. So as I said earlier, like, for example, you're someone who wants to do academic research and you're applying to like, again, UPenn psychology program example, and they have a research in, let's say, for example, positive psychology. And there's a professor there who teaches positive psychology who looks for student researchers. So you can explain how, you know, you're really into like learning about positive psychology and it's something you want to do more research on because of XYZ factors. And if you were at attend UPenn, you would be able to do that because they have a whole like department that focuses on positive psychology, something like that. So it's showing that through attending this university, you will be able to achieve your goals and contribute something productive to like the world, or to the Philippines in general. So that brings me to number 5. So add what you can contribute to the campus. So schools are not just looking for good students, they're looking for students who are able to make their campus a brighter and richer place. So add what you can bring to the table. Don't just like talk about the things that you did in the past, but rather what you can bring to the campus and how you can sell yourself. Oh, sell yourself. That sounds like such a bad phrasing, but like, you know what I mean? You have to make yourself marketable to the university so that they would consider you in their application process. So, for example, if you were a leader in the club, how would you bring that to the university? So, let's say if you were a leader for a youth organization, for example, you could say that you could bring that skill of leadership to the university by being active with the orgs, by having your own initiatives within the university. So something like that. Like if you're interested in like ballet or like jazz or like dance or anything, and you see that the university has a strong like arts environment, you could also say that you want to like join that, be a part of it, and that would make like the campus a richer place. So that's how you can like show what you can contribute to the campus. And other than that, another way to do it is to kind of talk about what you can contribute after earning your degree. That's a little more far-fetched. So I would suggest to only do this if you have a very specific career path in mind. So let's say, again, bringing it back to the example of if you were a psychology major and you wanted to do research on something specific, you could talk about the specific research you want to go into and how it's going to help other people in the end. So something like that. That shows that you know who you are, you know what your goals are, and you know that you can bring something to the campus as well as take something away once you become an alumni. So moving on to some helpful resources. So the first one was Camp Philippines. So for me, through attending like the transfer talk, okay, this puts pressure on myself, but yeah, like through attending the transfer talk, I was able to learn more about the transfer student experience, as well as know like what steps to take in order to transfer to a university. So yeah, that was really a valuable experience for me, and I hope that you guys learned something from this. And yeah, I hope that you've been able to like understand more about the process, and feel free to ask any questions later on if you have any. So next would be the college essay workshops. So I didn't really have to do a lot of essays. So for context, I applied to the UK and Australia, as I mentioned, and for the UK, it was simply a UCAS statement, which was very academic in nature. So I didn't know how to write a personal essay about myself, like at all. And then for Australia, they had no essays. So before applying to Singapore, I actually had no experience on this at all. And attending these essay workshops really helped me learn more about myself and what I wanted to write about. So next would be college fairs. So Camp has one right now. So the ones where you get to talk to like different admissions officers and they present more about the university and you can ask them questions. So I highly suggest attending the ones you're interested in because it can show the representative that you're interested in the university, as well as help you learn more about the culture, which you may not see on their website. Next, I would reach out to a lot of seniors and mentors. So if you know anyone from your high school who went to a university, try to reach out to them if you can, or if you have like a friend, you can kind of talk to them more about their experience. And I would suggest like, don't just ask them questions about the university, but also ask them questions about the city and the area that they live in. So you can ask them more logistical questions as well as like questions about like accommodation, city life, transportation, because these are all equally important when you do decide to transfer abroad. Because when you transfer abroad, you're not just attending a university, you're living in a different place as well. So that's another thing to remember, that you're going to have to learn more about the city or the country that you plan to move to. So next, for at least within camp, I had a mentor. I was once a camp mentee, so I was able to like reach out to her, ask her more questions. And then you can also reach out through LinkedIn if you've seen like people like posting about the university that they attend, or maybe an internship or an experience they had. Just you can try to like comment and see if they reply, or to just message them. Another option is to go to application agencies that can help. So like if you're interested in the UK, there's UKEAS. There's also like AUG, which is more for like Australia. And I think there's also IDP. So there's a lot of like agencies who can kind of help you narrow your college list and see where it would be a good fit for you. But I highly do suggest like just reaching out to a lot of people that you may know from your school or from camp or even through LinkedIn, because there's no harm in sending a message. Um, though I think it's important to also be reasonable with expecting a response from them, because a lot of people are like busy. So you could just like send them a message like, hey, person, I'm interested in learning more about applying to like this campus or more about your experience here. I was wondering if we could like set up a quick chat. So you can just send them something like that really quickly. And if they don't reply, just maybe bump the message after a few days and then see if they're available, then like schedule like a short Zoom talk or even just talk through chat. And yeah, like that would be like a really enriching experience for you. And yeah, one thing that I can have is when you do this, always make sure that you have a list of questions prepared, especially if it's a Zoom call, so that you don't miss out on anything and you're able to kind of fully utilize the time you have with that person. So next, I would also suggest online resources. Like the internet has so much information available when it comes to college applications and even transfer applications. So there's this blog, it's called College Essay Guy. So he's a college counselor and he just gives college essay tips. And through his exercises that he has on his website, that's where I was able to learn about personal values and how important that is when it comes to writing your application. So I highly suggest going to his website, and then he has like a bunch of worksheets which can help you discover your values and how you want to present them. Next is you can go through YouTube. So if you search like about the university you want to go to, you can look at their YouTube channel. Sometimes they also have college essay tips. So I was actually shocked with this. So I was considering UPenn for a bit, I'll be honest. That's why I keep bringing it up. But yeah, like if you search like UPenn, they actually have a college essay workshop, I believe. So you could like watch those videos if you're interested in the US. If you're interested in like the UK, there's also a bunch of UCAS essay videos. For Australia, I don't know if there are any transfer essays, but you could just watch like the university's videos to learn more about the campus. For Singapore, I believe there are also essay workshops, so you could just search up the university. Something should be there. Anyways, they always have those available on YouTube, so just make sure to use it to your full advantage. Next, there are also admissions talks. So like I mentioned earlier, AMP is currently having the talks from the different universities. So if you see a university you like, do attend their talk if you can. So this one, I don't really hear people giving advice on this because I think a lot of people don't see how it could be helpful for college applications or transfer applications, but I promise it really works. So one thing that I realized is the importance of personality tests. So a lot of people like have actually disputed these in the recent years, saying that a test can only measure who you are now. But I would say it is a helpful resource if you're trying to determine the values and your goals that you want to showcase throughout your essay. So I would suggest taking a few. So some of the ones I recommend are Dimensional. It's an app, so you can just download it. It's all free, so that's pretty good. And then there's also the Myers-Briggs. So that's the 16personalities.com. And it can help you see your strengths, because sometimes it's hard for us to determine like our values or strengths until we see, like we take a test and then we see the values, and then you can kind of like list examples or situations where you demonstrated those. So it can make it a lot easier for you to see what you have to offer to a certain university and how to make yourself marketable when you can see your traits like right there in front of you. So yeah, I would advise taking those, but also don't take them too seriously, because sometimes you may not resonate with it at all, and that's completely fine. And sometimes you do. So I think just take it to see like what's there, but it doesn't have to determine who you are and what you want to do. Next, we have online counseling. So there are a lot of like organizations online, AMP being one of them, that offer like free advice for studying abroad. So you can also reach out to a lot of those. As well as there are also like online, I think, paid counseling agencies that can help, but it would really depend on your personal preference and if you feel like it's necessary. But again, all of these you have to like take with like a grain of salt. So any like piece of advice, because at the end of the day, it's your application and you will decide on like what you want to do. So if you don't agree with like the advice someone gives you, you don't necessarily have to pursue it. So at the end of the day, it's about an application that's authentic to who you are now and who you want to be in the future. So moving on to like the advice portion. So this is just my transfer advice, and I would say start early, be selective, and know your goals. So as I keep saying, it's important to start early because the earlier you start, the sooner you can submit. And it takes more time to also prepare essays and standardize exams. And the earlier you start, the less stressed you will be. Next is to just be selective. So make sure you're applying to schools you can actually envision yourself attending, because as I stated a while ago, you will be balancing the college workload with your applications. And with this, it's important to know that by applying to colleges abroad, it doesn't mean that, like I think one tough pill to swallow is it doesn't mean that you will necessarily be able to attend or that you'll get accepted into the university that you want, simply because transfer applications are really more difficult because they accept less people. So yeah, you would have to accept that you may not be able to transfer abroad, and you may have to like make the most of your experience at your current university. So I would advise to make sure you keep your grades like up high, because you really don't know where the future will take you. So next is to know your goals, to have an idea of your long-term goals and find how you can connect that program with what you want to take with like your university life. Because once you know your goals, it will be a lot easier for you to write your essay and to make yourself quote unquote marketable, right? So you have to give concrete examples of how transferring will help you to achieve your goals and what you can contribute to the campus, which is what I said earlier in the transfer essay tip. So, okay, I think I just realized like another piece of advice is to always remember that when you transfer abroad or you study abroad, you're not just going to be there to study. Yes, the main purpose of you being there is to study, but you also have to consider the important fact that you will be living in that country or in that place. And if it's a place that you're unfamiliar with and you've never really been to, I also like highly suggest doing research about the place itself, or if you can, to try to visit to see if it's a city or a town that you would actually thrive in. So that's another important piece of advice that I have to give. And it's also like really good to consider the environment that in the school and outside the school as well. So that's pretty much it. All the pieces of advice I have to give so far. So if you have any other questions, you can like reach out to me after the session, but we also have a Q&A. So that's all.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gia. I think that your presentation is honestly super, super robust. Thank you so much for talking about a lot of things and even talking about transferring outside of Singapore, which is what like we thought that you would do. So like we're really excited about your talk. So we do have a few questions in the Q&A box. Participants, if you have any more, definitely keep them coming. So number one, are there scholarships specifically for transfer students? Would you know?
Right, okay, for scholarships, I'm only really knowledgeable about Singapore. So to just kind of like explain a little bit, Singapore has a tuition grant scheme. I think I mentioned this earlier. So if you are able to get into this scheme, you will only be paying half of the tuition for international students. And if you want the scholarship, that's also available, but only at SMU, NTU, and SUTD. I'm not sure about other universities, but I know NUS does not give scholarships to transfer students.
Yeah, I can talk about US universities. A lot of them actually don't have scholarships for transfer students. Some universities, you're eligible for financial aid as a transfer, but like scholarships, medyo wala. Yeah. Okay, and then what application agencies do you recommend, Gia? If you were able to like use any.
Okay, so I've only worked with one. So that was UKEAS. That was when I did my first year application to the UK. I'm not too sure about the transferring process, but I think you can just send them an inquiry. So if you're interested in Australia, there's AUG. For the US, I think there is one, USA. I'm not sure the name, but it starts with USA. And then the next one that I know is IDP. So I think they're also UK based. Yeah.
Okay, and then is it better to ask high school teachers or university professors for rec letters?
Okay, this one, I think it depends, because in my case, it was because I had Ateneo online, so I wasn't really able to bond with my professors as much. And also because in college, you only have one sem with your professor, so your high school teachers might know you a lot better. But I think this is only applicable if you're transferring as a year one student to an institution. Because if you've been in college for 2 years, I think that it's better to ask a university because it's more recent.
Got it. And then I think that this is specifically for Singapore. How much do you pay if you're willing to disclose after scholarships, and can you work while you study?
Okay, specifically for Singapore, it depends on the scholarship you get. I think some scholarships will cover like some from what I know, it's like 50% to like 100%. So it really depends on the type that you get. But rest assured, there are a lot of full ride scholarships to Singapore. So you could look at that. One to look at is the ASEAN scholarship. So this is for all ASEAN students who want to study in Singapore. Another one is like the Dr. Goss scholarship. So this one can also give you allowance and I think also like living, like accommodation. I'm not too sure. So you'll have to like do some research on that one.
Got
And
it.
okay.
Yeah.
I think the other question, it also had something about working part-time. I think you can do that for sure, but it would really depend on the student pass, since for the student pass, you can only work for a certain number of hours every week. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's easier also to get an on-campus job than an off-campus job. So something also to take note of. And then can you reuse essays from first year applications if you previously applied to schools abroad? Like do the prompts match?
I it depends like where you applied in the past. So for me, I wasn't able to reuse any because the prompts just didn't match. But if you wrote like first year essays, usually like they're quite generic and you can take some inspiration from that. It really just depends on the situation.
Yeah. Also, I can answer for US. The US Common App prompt is different from like the first year prompt, so just take note of that. But they still might ask you to do things like, are you interested in the school? Are you interested in that major? So, if you're applying to the same school, baka you can use that. And then is it allowed to apply as a transfer student to universities we applied to before?
I think yes. It just depends on that university because some of them have strict policies on it. But usually there's no issue with that as long as you can show that you're what within a year that you've changed and you've become a better applicant. I think it's okay.
All right. And then next, how different is the academic system in Singapore compared to the Philippines? And can you delve into the workload and the student culture?
Okay, yeah, this one is very, very it's a quite long answer. So for context, I think we have to start from high school. So in the Philippines, most people will do either IB or the K to 12 system. We have APs, but I don't really hear about it as much. Whereas in Singapore, they either do the IB or the Singaporean system where they go to junior college, which is equivalent to our senior high school for 2 years, or they go to Polytechnic, which is kind of like a community college, I guess. And that would be a 3-year program, but they come out with a degree and a major. So basically, exactly like a community college. So with that, the classmates that you have may have already had experience in that degree. So for example, in accountancy, those who went to Polytechnic already have experience. They already know like the basics and fundamentals. So that can mean like your classmates just have more experience than you, which can make it more competitive. So I would say like coming from IB, I didn't have that much experience with my major. I have no CS background at all. So I would say the workload for me was very, very high because of that, because I didn't have any prior knowledge. I had to put in the extra effort. So I would say when it comes to Singapore, the workload is high. If you're comparing it to Ateneo, it's just the contact hours that differ, but I would say workload wise is quite similar. Yeah.
Got it. And then, just curious, but in your experience, was it easier to apply as a transfer compared to when you applied in the previous year?
I would say since Singapore, you apply as a first year, I wouldn't say it's any different from applying if you were a first year student. But I will say one advantage I had as a transfer student was I was able to kind of show the universities how I would perform in this type of setting, which can be considered as an advantage, but also if there are fewer slots, the competition is a lot higher. Yeah.
Got it. And then, is it more difficult to get scholarships or grants as a transfer applicant?
I think again, this depends like which country you're trying to apply to, because if you're going for like US, Australia, UK, it really is a lot harder. Whereas in Singapore, since you're applying as like a year one student, I don't think it's that much of a disadvantage unless you want to go to NUS on a full scholarship, because they just don't offer that for transfer students.
Yeah, and um wait, there's another question that's more of how expensive is your major and do you have scholarships? Is it hard to get a scholarship and do they offer merit scholarships to transfers?
Um, is this for Singapore specifically or like in general?
I think in general, but you can answer the first half of the question first. How expensive is the major and do you have scholarships?
Yeah, again, it really depends on what your scholarship covers. So if you were to, let's say, for example, get a grant, like a tuition grant within the Singapore context, the grant would cover half and the scholarship would cover half. So essentially, it's a full ride. But in some cases, if you don't get the grant and you get like, let's say, a scholarship, it could be like 50% or 75%, something around that range.
Yeah, and then merit scholarships for the US, wala for transfers as far as I know, but it's still possible to get financial aid. Um, but if you want to go to like Australia, na like you trans or like Australia or Hong Kong, na you take 1 year in the Philippines and then transfer to like Australia, Hong Kong, then like I think that it's still possible to get a scholarship because you're transferring in. But yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. And then as a transfer student, you still need to submit high school transcript of records, or do you just need your grades from the last sem in college or university?
You will submit high school and your grades from the last sem, depending on the university. But yeah, both usually it's both.
Got it. And then can you start as a second year if you're applying after your first year in the Philippines, or do you really have to start as a first year?
This depends on your university, but if you're looking at Singapore, everyone starts at first year, but you have transfer credits. So just because you start as a first year, it doesn't mean you're gonna graduate in 4 years. You could honestly cut it down to 3 as long as you plan properly.
Yep. Yeah. And then if you want to go to Australia, then if you transfer after a first year in the Philippines, then you don't have to do foundation year or submit SAT, ECT. So that's another thing. And then was it difficult to get a scholarship in Singapore?
I think it depends on what you apply to, because like I mentioned, if you apply for an ASEAN scholarship that considers all the countries in the region, there's a lot less competition as if you were to apply to like a general international student type of scholarship. So you can try to see if there are any scholarships in Singapore that are specifically like for Filipinos. I'm not sure that I've heard of any for undergrad, but if you would want to consider graduate school in the future, I know there is one for SMU. Yeah.
Yay, all right. And then what do you mean by grants from Singapore universities? Are they offered by admission and do you have to apply for a separate financial aid package to acquire a full ride?
Okay. I think, okay, this one, I will clarify it entirely. The Singaporean government is the one who gives the grants to international students who want to study in Singapore. So that means you're bonded to the government specifically. So they'll pay for half of your tuition, provided that you'll work in Singapore for 3 years. So you don't have to work in Singapore, but you have to work for a Singaporean company. And if it's like an international company, you have to be in the Singapore office. So that's how it works. They are offered like during admission. So I remember when I submitted my application, there's like a box there that says, would you want to be considered for the tuition grant scheme? So you just have to check it. And then for the scholarship, usually it's just one application. There's no separate scholarship application. So the moment you submit your application for, let's say, SMU, the scholarship essay is already part. And at the same time, like you should know that they don't consider this as a factor into accepting you. So there are 3 ways you can get accepted. So the first one is no tuition grant, no scholarship. You're just accepted as a full paying international student. The second way is you could get accepted with a tuition grant, which means you're going to be paying the subsidized fees, but you'll have to work there for 3 years. And the third way is you get accepted with a tuition grant and with the scholarship. So that means 100% like you'll have to like pay anything. Yeah. I hope that
Yeah,
like
all
clears it
right.
up.
Yeah, okay. All right. And then how did you secure accommodation? I heard school dorms are very competitive in Singapore and you need to be
Okay.
active in a certain organization.
Okay. Based on this question, I'm gonna assume that you've been on the SMU Reddit page because I will say, like, coming from SMU, that we only have two dorms. So one I think has less than 100 slots, probably like 50, if like 50 or less. And the other one is the one I stayed at last year. That's the main dorm called Princep, and it has 230, if I'm not mistaken. And it is very competitive to secure a dorm slot simply because they'll prioritize first years and also like students who are active within the dorm who have like certain roles since they have to be there to participate. So yes, like for first year, I think I just got really lucky, but for second year, I wasn't able to get it anymore. So that's something to consider if you're interested in SMU. If you're going to NUS or NTU, from what I know, if you go to NUS college, it's 4 years required dorm, so you're not going to have any problems. If you go to NUS, like the main campus itself, I think there are enough dorms there, but it also depends. You have to check if they'll guarantee it to you. For NTU, I know that it's 100% they guarantee you accommodation for 2 years. And for SUTD, I know they guarantee it for 1 year, but I'm not sure because SUTD, NTU, and NUS tend to have less international students compared to SMU. So there should be more slots available. Yeah.
So perfect. And then more questions about the government grant. Is that the same as the MOE grants that all international students get?
Okay, yes, but I'd like to clarify that the government grant and the MOE grant are the same, but it does not guarantee that just because you applied for it as an international student means that you're guaranteed to get it. So again, it really depends, and it's also competition based on academics and extracurriculars.
Got it. How competitive is the grant? I think is the next question that people want to get answered.
I actually am not sure about this because I haven't done specific research on it. But from what I've seen recently, it got more competitive over time. But yeah, like I'm sure they give a lot of grants since I know a lot of people who are able to get tuition grants.
Perfect. And then where do you access the application with tuition grant and scholarships for SMU?
It's on the same portal. So like once you apply for SMU, you'll see the checkbox that says, are you applying for the grant? And then the scholarship. Take note that for SMU specifically, I think you can only apply for scholarship if you check the grant. So you can't get no grant with a scholarship. It has to be both. Yeah.
Got it. And then for transfer apps to SMU, do they require interviews for these scholarships or financial aid? And I think that'll be our last question.
For SMU specifically, the interview depends. So if you were to be eligible for like the Lee Kong Chian scholarship, so that's like the one specific for business, you have an interview. But if you're going for like ASEAN, like you won't have an interview at all. So again, that really depends for the scholarship you applied to.
Is there an interview for like the general process?
For the general process, yes, but in certain cases, you can be accepted without one.
Got it. All right. And then sorry, final question. Is it easy to pick up Singlish? So like Singaporean.
Oh my God. I love this question. That's so funny. I will say no. I've been in Singapore for 1 year, and sometimes I still don't understand certain words. So, quick lesson since we still have like 2 minutes. They say like la, so that's kind of like how we say like na, pa, stuff like that. So that's just like a thing. And then they also have like specific words like shag, which I'm not sure what that means, but yeah, like you'll get there eventually. I mean, I hope I get there, but yeah, like you could watch some videos on it online if that's something you're worried about. But I'd say in general, the more friends you make, the faster it'll be for you to adapt. So yeah. That's
Love it.
it.
Okay, so that concludes our Q&A session. Thank you so much for your active participation, everyone. I hope that our beloved speaker was able to shed light on your curiosities and concerns. But if not, definitely Gia was able to give her contact details a while ago. So Gia, can you yeah, sorry, she already answered in the chat. Please message. Oh, sorry, can you send it to everyone actually? You sent it to the host and panelists.
Oh my God,
Yeah,
sorry.
feel free to message Gia on Messenger. Um, and if you have any specific concerns about like what you're gonna write in your essay, or if your application is good enough for specific like universities and where you want to apply to, we really recommend you to go to our office hours scheduled tomorrow, 5 to 7 p.m. But yeah, on behalf of CAM's 2023 facilitation team, I would like to extend our sincerest gratitude and appreciation to you, Gia, for sharing with us your invaluable insights today. We're super, super grateful for you accepting our speaker invitation. So everyone, let's give a round of applause for Gia. I hope that you guys got excited from the session because we'll be having our next session on gap years right now. So that's it. Thank you so, so much, Gia. We really loved your talk. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. I
Thank
hope you
you.
learned
Right.
something. And yeah, just feel free to reach out.
So great. Thank you so, so much. All right. So, hey again, everyone.